Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. Some of our lovely panelists did not have to get up at 8 or 9:30 a.m. to participate in this panel, and I'm very jealous of them. But wherever you may be, welcome one and welcome all to the Wheels That Break Us dystopian and systemic horror in fiction. I We're gonna do an introduction a little bit of a different way for this panel. I am going to ask my lovely panelists to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to read the introduction, or rather part of the introduction to an anarchist text called Blessed is the Flame. And then we are going to go ahead and discuss what it means to use dystopian and systemic horror rather than cosmic horror or folk horror or any other kind of horror in your tabletop games and LARPs. So first off, hi, my name is Jacqueline Bryk. I also go by Jax Romana. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and Femme. I am a writer, editor, game designer. I have done basically everything with games you can imagine except for merchandising, layout, and art. I also was nominated for an Emmy yesterday as well, so that's very exciting. So yeah, you can find most of my stuff under Rufflejax, most places on the internet. That's RUFFLEJAX. I'm sorry if I'm like stuttering. I haven't taken my meds yet, so this is going to be very exciting. But let us go ahead and start alphabetically. So Ettin or Paul, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. I'm Ettin. My mom calls me Paul. I'm a tabletop game maker. I'm turned to cover it. I made Hardwired Island, which is like a retro future cyberpunk game, and also Breakfast Cult, which is like cosmic horror and high school mysteries. And I also did Oh Dang Bigfoot Stole My Car Off My Friend's Birthday Present Inside, which is 1 page long and more popular than both of them.
Amazing. All right, Steffie.
Hi, I'm Steffie Vaan. I'm a tabletop designer and developer. I also got nominated for an Emmy yesterday, so I'll join Jax in that rank. I'm super excited to be here and talk about systemic horror.
And finally, Wes, our lovely producer.
Hi there, my name is Wes Franks. My pronouns are he, they. I'm the founder and creative director of Caring Comfort Studios, where we do a lot of different various content, if you want to call it, art to some out there that involves tabletop role-playing games, music, interviews, things of that nature. I've written on some stuff that is yet to be released. I have not been nominated for an Emmy, but I'm very honored to be around a group of people who I dearly respect their work. Especially, all three of you. This is great. This is amazing. This is awesome. Dream come true. So happy to be here.
Also him. I forgot to say that.
Thank you. All right. We love a pronoun.
Yeah.
I saw a wonderful Twitter post recently that was, back in my day, we didn't have pronouns. Wait, back in the day, there were no pronouns. Back in day, no pronoun. That was very funny to me. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of Blessed is the Flame, which is an anarcho-nihilist text about systemic death and revolution, because I would like this to inform our panel a little bit. For those of you watching, hello, this is a very political panel. If you don't like politics in your gaming, please tune out now. You'll be much more comfortable. We have already been led to our slaughter. It is all around us. The world in which we exist is a protracted death, a sort of economically sustained limbo in which hearts are permitted to beat only to the extent that they can facilitate the upward stream of capital. The plague of domestication has reached into every wild space, and the lines of colonization have crossed us more times than we can count. Every unproductive aspect of the biosphere has been flagged for eradication, from the beam-trawled ocean floors to the dynamited reefs to the hollowed-out mountains. The highest calibers of technology are locked into a perpetual killing spree, chugging along in a monotonous rhythm of death. We who still have air in our lungs are the living dead, and struggle daily to remember what it feels like to be alive, holding tightly to the desire for wildness that a misery of a paycheck cannot allay. We roam the desolate architecture of our slaughterhouses like ghosts who feel but cannot quite understand the vapidity of our existence. To borrow some apt phrases from the conspiracy of cells of fire, we have become thoroughly integrated into a system that crushes us on a daily basis, that controls our thoughts and our desires through screens, and teaches us how to be happy servants, while letting us consider ourselves free because we can vote and consume, and all the while, we, like cheerful Sisyphus, are still carrying our slavery stone and think this is life. As an American Iraq War veteran turned strategy consultant wrote for the New York Times in 2013, the biggest problem we face is a philosophical one: understanding that civilization is already dead. The extent to which we have internalized the rhythms, values, and stories of this civilization ties our future to this undead and all-devouring system. Perhaps a better question might be, why are we being continuously led to our slaughter like sheep? To which many of us simply reply, we aren't. So to open this panel, I would love to get your thoughts on that reading and sort of what really stood out in that passage to y'all.
I, for one, always love being compared to Sisyphus, especially when it's true. That's always a cheerful way to start the morning. But it is very, very on the money. It's always interesting to have conversations with people, and they talk about dystopia, or they talk about post-apocalyptic or things that nature. And it's always a cheerful reminder to let you know it's like, no, we're in it. We're in it right now. It's just not as exciting as say Fallout or BioShock or something like that. It's very slow burning. It's the whisper, not the bang. No, that is that very much on the money with that.
What jumped out at me was probably like just the last bit, like the big "this is fine" vibes.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that a lot because I am Australian, so sometimes like Americans will go, "Oh man, our country is so great. It's the land of the free. It's the best place in the world," and then they tell you what the actual country is like, and it's like, "Are you for real? You live like this?"
Yes.
Okay, so like, you had a school shooting, and you said, "Oh, you know what we should do about this? We should put police in schools." So you did that, and then for years they did nothing but like arrest the black kids, and then school shootings still happen, and then the cops are like, "Well, I guess I'll go hide in the bush now."
Yep.
And everyone's just like, "Yep, it's very normal."
It's fine and normal. Yep.
Yes.
Steffie?
Also, yeah.
No, go ahead, finish.
I could go on about this for days. Sorry, I just remembered. A few years back, I saw a preview for that Dora the Explorer movie, the live action one, and there was like a security checkpoint outside her school, and like, do you actually have those?
Yeah, absolutely.
What the fuck?
Sure do.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, I want to cycle back to what Wes said about the apocalypse is a whisper, not a bang. It's a very slow burn, slow moving apocalypse, and I think we've been programmed because most apocalyptic settings deal with the apocalypse happened, whatever the fuck it was, and we're behind it. So we're not. There is no strong cultural framework for what the apocalypse looks like, which is why it's so hard to recognize it. No, vast amounts of the world are literally on fire. It's kind of we're in it. Give it 100 years, and this will have been the apocalypse. But
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because in Octavia Butler's Parable of the Talents, she specifically refers to the apocalypse as actually being a period of between 15 and 20 years that people casually refer to as the pox.
Yeah.
Now that it's passed. People are like, oh yeah, I can't imagine what it was like to live during the pox, but most of her books take place as the pox is happening.
Yeah.
Because it's just slow. But yeah, no. something that actually brings me to my first question is, what does dystopia and systemic horror mean to you? And if it is different from apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic genres, how is it different?
I usually focus on the smaller. So the systemic part for me is you have to pay rent, you're working 3 jobs, you're drowning in debt, you're one payment behind on losing your car. And if you lose your car, you lose one of the jobs because you're a rideshare driver. And then when you lose that job, you're in risk of losing your apartment. And also there's a killer clown that you have to deal with at some point during all of this shit. And that is typically how I like to set up my horror. And then it's like, yeah, there's a lot of balls to keep up in the air.
I like that. Don't like the clown as much, but I like that.
Yes. Not a fan of clowns.
Absolutely viewed it as it's very similar to Steffie, but also there's something absolutely terrible and tragic and absolutely world-ending going on, and we've still somehow found a way to make an advertisement out of it. The world-ending cataclysm has been commodified in some way, shape, or form, which is always just a bright, glaring sign for me.
Like that. Ettin, you're in fact writing a post-cyberpunk game right now, so tell us a little bit more about how we're commodifying the end of the world.
Well, I mean, the stuff about, having multiple jobs and like managing your money is like literally baked into Hardwired Island's rules. So, that's fun. I'm trying to think of what else. So Hardwired Island's a bit weird because I call it post-cyberpunk a lot, and that's because most cyberpunk games are just like really depressing, and then they go, oh, you can't really do anything about this, it's going to be depressing forever. But then in the one that I'm writing, you can kind of do something about it. I think what sets it apart from like apocalyptic stuff and like post-apocalyptic for me is, well, in post-apocalyptic fiction, normally all the worst stuff, the bad stuff, like it's already happened, and it's the only way to go is up, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess usually when I think of just like apocalypse stuff, it is usually like big and flashy and loud and not just weird.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So something I think of, there are 2 things I think of when I think of dystopian and systemic horror. Okay, there's a lot more things that I think of, and I have so many recommendations for the end of this panel. We are going to, Wes, when you give us the 10-minute warnings, that's just when we're going to dump all of our recommendations, because I'm sure we all have at least several. But for me, my 2 big ones are the God Machine Chronicle for Chronicles of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
As well as a cyberpunk feudalism system agnostic game called Zigguratty, in which everyone is in a literally stratified caste system in a tiered city. So like you have your serfs who work 16 hours a day and sleep for 8 hours a day. And if that sounds like they don't get breaks or sick time, you are correct. And people actually have to pool hours that they get from being nice to the upper classes to get people sick time, or otherwise they become burdens on the society. Mm-hmm. And then you have your knights, who are your cops, and your clerics, who are your like celebrities and wealthy people and whatnot, and the whole thing. The game is designed to be played as though you are a serf or a burden, and you exist in that system, and how you exist and survive in that system. I designed a LARP version of it at one point where there are more serf players than any other players. So like, while the knights and the clerics are ordering people around and creating play, you essentially have these very small, intimate human moments between the serfs that you don't really get in the upper classes, because in the upper classes you're all about like how you present yourself and how the world sees you. And I thought that was a really cool stratification, and being able to have those small moments of intimacy in between the 3 jobs and the killer clowns and the giant bright neon advertisements is one of the most important things about the genre to me is even when the world is grinding you down into just another body of labor, where do you find your humanity in everything?
I find that comfort is crucial in systemic horror games. Like the reason why the characters keep going is because at the end of the day they get to come home and be with their friends and share an ice cream if they could afford it.
Yeah.
And I find that is vital, because otherwise the game does also start to grind you down, like you player. So you have to take those moments of comfort in the game and in real life. But and I think that really helps to balance it out so that they have a reason to why do we do this?
Yeah.
Oh,
very much.
There's a very beautiful video game that the best written moments. It's called Citizen Sleeper. It just came out a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. The artwork is fantastic, and it plays like a tabletop role-playing game. It's almost kind of like a solo journaling game almost.
Nice.
And it takes place on a space station in the far reaches of outer space, and you play a robot who has been inhabited by the memories and the soul, so to speak, of a human that gave away their soul, their who they are, to a company. To work for that company, and you escape, and so you're hiding out on the space station. But the thing is, you have to do menial jobs and labor to be able to stay alive, because you're deteriorating rapidly. So you got to keep yourself up. You've got to be able to rest and keep your energy and everything like that. But a lot of the best written moments in that game is the moments of you eating food. There's a character that's a chef that makes mushroom stuff for you, and it goes so much into rich detail about the texture and the taste of this mushroom dish that he's making, and it talks about the comfort of spending time with a friend and their child and things of that nature, and everything else. It's like, oh yeah, well, you go through backbreaking labor for the next 8 to 12 hours or however many hours and things of that nature, but it's those very quiet moments that are the best.
I love that.
Like Homer Simpson with his picture of Maggie.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Do it for her.
Yep.
Ettin, is there anything you wanted to add on to that?
This has been a really good discussion, but I forgot the question. We're talking about systemic horror, right?
Yeah.
And games that we like. Probably what I go for is...
Yeah, no, right now, we're not doing recommendations yet. Mostly what we're talking...
Yeah.
No, right now what we're sort of talking about is like the comfort, finding comfort in weird places.
Yeah, comfort. So I got like really lost in what we were talking about, like that little moment, and then just hey, that technically counts. In that case, I'll still go with the same thing I was thinking of. The Eclipse Phase, tabletop RPG I really like. It's you know the deal. It's like a very far future thing, and you're fighting existential horrors with the help of like basically a bunch of randos. But what I like about the setting is that like it's really richly detailed, and a lot of the detail is just in unrelated stuff. Like a lot of it's just like, here's a place where people like to hang out. Here's a giant space habitat that's made of meat, and it's called Turn Yourself into a Giant Piece of Space Meat for Art or something like that. And just like all these really cool places that just show all the kinds of weird stuff that people will get up to if they had access to this technology. And I just like that.
Yeah. I like the sapient octopus. He's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I love that we went specifically into talking about comfort, because I think that's a really important part of systemic horror. Something I personally really struggle with is people wanting to be heroes in systemic horror. People deciding that they and maybe their 3 or 4 closest friends are going to take down the system by killing one person. And I'm curious as to your guys' thoughts on that.
No, you can maybe kill that one person, that's fine, and there will be another person. There's always another CEO of Amazon.
The reason that so frequently systems of these kind of systems that are in place are referred to as a machine, the God machine in Chronicles of Darkness and things of that nature, is that when a piece of the machine is broken, or is removed, there's always another place to be to repair. There's always somebody that is there to make sure that it keeps running, that it keeps getting repaired. And even though you do act like the big bad hero and you get your crack team of anti-capitalists that break into the headquarters and you assassinate the head of state or whatever you have in your game, and you're like, yeah, it's all taken care of. There's, even if it looks different, even if it's somebody else that's it's going to be replaced, and you're just going to go back to the status quo. It is one of my big problems with the comic book Fables by Bill Willingham, is because the status quo is upheld in that story when things are supposed to be changed. And it happens exactly how that just played out.
Yeah, it's tricky, especially in games, because like in games you want to give them something to do, but yeah, not like too much to do, I suppose. Oh, like the worst game session I ever had was Call of Cthulhu. That was great. It was a scenario, and I know nothing about it except there was like a house we were investigating and something weird in the basement, and that's all I know, because as soon as one player like lost a bit of sanity, he decided he would force everybody back into the car and we'd all drive off. And then the end. That was it. Yeah. Fucking nothing. I would have at least liked to die to the monster.
That person did not know how to play Call of Cthulhu.
No, you're supposed to. Or he did, actually.
Yeah, fair.
The only way to win is not to play.
Yeah, but do you want to win Call of Cthulhu?
No, we're there to play Call of Cthulhu. It's fine.
Yeah. So basically, you want to let them actually like explore a bit and like probe the monster and maybe have fun fighting the monster, and then they can all die. Then that's fine.
Sure.
But
I mean, 10 Candles is probably one of the biggest games in the genre where you are playing to lose, because the whole point of that game is just to follow this group of people until their lights go out. And I think that's a pretty good example. Like, yeah, that is a very slow burn ritualistic horror, but I think that's a pretty good example of systemic horror as well.
Isn't Morkborg like that too? Kind of.
Is it?
I think so.
Morkborg does have essences of you are a miserable bastard and you are going to one day expire from this wretched apocalypse.
Isn't one of the main mechanics just it's basically just a countdown until the game ends?
There's an apocalypse clock optional mechanic. A lot of people tend
that's what I'm thinking of.
not to use that because they're like, oh, I just want to play Dark Souls at the tabletop, but with like black metal. But no, that there is definitely eventually your time is going to run out, and no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to stop it. So make the most of your time as you got it. Also,
you totally just said Dark Souls twice. It's fine.
Yeah, I just said Dark Souls twice.
I think a lot about sort of heroes in horror games, especially in systemic or dystopian horror games, because something that the book I read from in the beginning of this panel, Blessed is the Flame, which I'm going to keep saying that because you can pick it up for free at the Anarchist Library, and please go get it when you have a chance. It is an excellent book. It is one of my favorite pieces of anarchist theory. Something they talk about is the anarchist concept of jouissance, which is a French word meaning enjoyment. But for anarchists, what it means is uncivilized and unbound desire and joy. And the argument in Blessed is the Flame is because Blessed is the Flame is actually primarily it was written by the grandchild of a Holocaust survivor. It's primarily about talking about the history of rebellion in the Holocaust and using it to apply to our current day situation. One of the things they talk about is like, oh, well, when we think of successful revolution or rebellion, we think of, oh, yeah, a bunch of people just broke down the gates to this camp and let a whole bunch of people free. And we don't think about, hey, this one person escaped only to be caught later. Or, hey, these people had an underground network that murdered informants to the Nazis. Or in one of my favorite lines in the books, the unmitigated joy of pissing in a Nazi rocket and sabotaging Nazi construction. And that joy, that ability to just be able to put that rebellious creation and destruction in the world doesn't get talked a lot about because it's not big, it's not glamorous, it's not like, oh yeah, we all took down the Nazis in one fell swoop,
Yes.
sort of thing. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, especially because we were talking about comfort and finding places to be a human in dystopian fiction. So if anybody has any thoughts on
Yes.
that.
I think I read somewhere that at one point, I think it was one of the extermination camps, and at one point the resistance in the camp, so basically the people who were detained there, the Jewish population largely, but also others, had managed to sabotage the gas chamber, and it didn't work anymore.
Yes.
And then they fixed it, and they continued killing people. But the fact that the Nazis went in and they repaired the chamber and they continued doesn't mean that act of resistance didn't count.
Right.
That is an amazing act of resistance. And so applying that to the game, I do think you need to give players their moment of victory and resistance. Like, so I don't know. So there's a evil company and it's churning out killer clowns for whatever reason. And the killer clown is attacking a little girl. Can you save the little girl? Yes. Can you kill the clown? Yes. Can you kill the killer clown factory? No. Is the little girl going to grow up into a teenage girl who might get killed by a clown? Yes. But you did save her at that time, and that counts.
Yeah. You gave her all of those years.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's important. Yeah, I think thinking of victory conditions in games as being as, oh, one and done, you did it, and now it's fixed, is something that I personally find very frustrating.
There's so many different moving parts that come with successful revolution or fighting a back against something. And like you said, with like the pissing in the rockets, the finding the small joy in that, and the comeuppance. One of the most important parts of rebellion or revolution that people, a lot of people include, but some people forget about, is pirate radio or free radio broadcasting, things of that nature. Anti-propaganda. Things that are actively using the channels that are being used against them to subjugate them, and actively using them back as a fuck you to the system. And whether that be, and it doesn't have to be anti-capitalist, anti-whatever your anti-propaganda. It doesn't have to be reflecting back to that. It can be just as simple as playing a song. And it's something that I like to incorporate because I recently, in one of the streams that we ran, we used the Lancer system, which is a mech fighting system. You play a bunch of pilots that fight in mechs, and it's big dumb robots fight giant monsters or other big dumb robots. But we had it was set in a cyberpunk kind of, this season was set in a cyberpunk kind of universe. So the music was inspired by Massive Attack and everything. Nice. And in the middle of it, the players decided to disrupt the status quo. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure to include is that there was this pop star that was planetside whose song was being used as a anthem almost. And it was this very poppy love song that was being used. But like, just, we wanted to make sure that like when we conveyed it to the audience, it's like when people heard these notes, it reminded them of something. It was a constant reminder that even it's something so mundane as just hearing a song on the radio, but it gives a little bit of spark and a little bit to keep going.
I love that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think. Both of my games, like both of my big games, have stuff like this, I guess. Hardwired Island, the main one, is so the main plot of at least like the example scenarios is essentially a bunch of corporations have got together to try to make a new kind of robot. It's not an android because they already have androids, and androids are like, hey, can I have some money for my work, please? And that's just bullshit. So they try to make a new kind of, I suppose, android with like thought patterns that were so alien that you can only barely communicate with them, and you can definitely not hear them ask about a 401k. And then they all escaped and started getting up to mischief because it turns out that was a bad idea. And you don't really stop the project during the arc. What you do is you annoy them enough and sabotage enough stuff that the people back in the projects decide that it is cheaper to stop.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's no real like final battle with the corporations or anything. It's just slowly needling them into making them fuck off.
I love that. That's good. It's very good. I love a game about slowly needling corporations. It's actually one of my big issues with Werewolf the Apocalypse, which is a very fun game, especially if you're looking into all of like the cosmology and the world building surrounding it. I actually find the werewolves the least interesting part of it, but that's just me. Earlier iterations of Pentex are like, yeah, they have this big evil plan to move everyone off planet, and then question mark, and then they're rich. And I think a lot about that because a lot of times in systemic horror, we forget that corporations are evil not because they are targeting us necessarily, but because they forget about the humanity of the people they are interacting with. Corporations are not evil because they hate you personally. Corporations are evil because they don't acknowledge anything but themselves and their profits. And I think that is something we could stand to see more of in tabletop games, LARPs, video games, etc. Especially in cyberpunk games, because I think a lot of the time in games like Shadowrun or the Sprawl or the Veil, your enemies are not like punch clock villains, more or less. They are, these horrible, sadistic people who work for the corpse because it provides them power, blah, blah, blah. And there are those people. There are always going to be those people. The mean girl to helping profession pipeline is a thing for a reason. But I think making the evil less sort of, I don't want to say less Cthulhu, because Cthulhu doesn't particularly care about you either.
No.
Less megalomaniacal and more Pleasantville, I guess.
Yeah.
Less cartoony.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for our systemic and dystopian horror. Weirdly, a good example of this is the Hunger Games. Because
yes,
it's not that they hate you personally, it's that if you cause problems for the people at the top, you need to go.
You are severely limiting their way of life by your very act of not doing what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
That's something you like bringing it up, making it less Cthulhu is one of the things that I definitely like to see, and it stands out when games that I play or like streams that I watch, which is kind of like my realm of purview is because I take in so much of like this streamed content of TTRPGs because I like watching it, and it's good to know what's happening, what's the meta, so to speak. But it's the best villains are the ones that are like your next door neighbor. They are somebody that is very normal. They're your city council. They're your alderman. They are your they're the owner of the grocery store in town because they're the ones that control the supply. They control the supply. And that it's something, and it might be anything like that. It could be a doctor, it could be a dentist, it could be the head of the post office. But they have an iron grip on something that you need that shouldn't be a commodity. Should probably be something that should just be shared amongst the community equally. But they are utilizing that, and they're withholding it for means to make themselves more rich or to make their life easier, in a way.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna make Jax a bit worried, but it's fine. Speaking of Cthulhu.
Oh boy,
this isn't going to be Cthulhu Tech, it's fine. It could be Cthulhu Tech, I thought of something. But so this game, Breakfast Cult, The basic idea of that one is just you are high school students, but it's at a magic high school. It's in the late 21st century when magic has been discovered and it basically works like a science. And also there's all these like original character do not steal Lovecraft monsters. It's great. But one of the villains that I'm thinking of now is it's basically a corporation called Sunrise Heavy Industries. Sunrise helped build the school, so they know the blueprints, so that's a problem. But they also want to basically the school is part of their plans, but their longer reaching plan is basically to spike the water supply of the whole planet with stuff that will turn people into monsters that work for them, which is not ideal. But one thing I did with them is what they do with their evil plots, right? If they got caught doing these evil plots, then the government would shoot them with a very large, powerful gun. So what they do is they disguise their evil plots as regular, non-magical evil corporate plots.
Nice.
And now instead of shooting them, the government will take very large sums of money to make it go away.
Nice.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. That feels very realistic to me.
Absolutely.
Steffi, do you have anything to add to that before I go on to a slightly different topic?
No, I think we've covered everything on this one.
Something I would also like to put in here is that I think when people hear, well, if you just cut off a head, 3 more will appear, and yeah, you can kill the CEO of Amazon in Minecraft, and then another one will appear, and perhaps someone will shit himself in the Gen Con Chick-fil-A in 2015, but then another one will appear if we don't prevent it. But I think something that we forget a lot of the time is that villains like this who care about people as property or as parts of a spreadsheet or as part of their fan base are petty. They are petty. They have a lot of flaws, and I don't.
Ego.
Yeah, and I don't think it's hard, right? Because you have to have this balance of this very specific, like, yeah, they have a lot of power and they have a lot of influence and they have a lot of, you know, they control basically half the world by blinking, more or less. But then they're also petty. They have foods they don't like. They make mistakes. They
you could be one, possibly the richest person on the earth with a sociopathic desire to be liked by strangers on Twitter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think we forget about this a lot when we build our villains. And I'm going to call out the Terminator RPG by Nightfall Games because I'm still really mad about it. There's an entire sidebar they wrote called What It Means to Be Human. And the sidebar that's what it means to be human is like, oh yeah, humans can feel pain. Skynet does not feel pain. It does not feel remorse. It does not make mistakes. It is cold and logical and blah, blah, blah. And it's essentially jacking off to Skynet, right? But if you look at the actual Terminator movies and comic books, the whole thing there is about how Skynet is so afraid of losing that instead of just killing John Connor, it sends a T-800 back through an experimental time machine to kill John Connor's mother. Like, that is incredibly emotional and petty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is not enough to just kill you right now. It is enough to kill the very thought of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
As an aspect.
Yeah. And I think we forget a lot about that. So if you have any thoughts on like that, or in like how to balance pettiness versus effectiveness in your villains, I would love to hear that.
I mean, that does give the heroes an opening, which they might take, but I'm still firmly in the camp that, yeah, you killed the one sociopathic person on Twitter, there's another, and another, and another. Because what going back to the Hunger Games, which is actually one of my favorite books. I'm obsessed with the movies. I love them so much.
The music and the movies
they
is
hit all of
phenomenal.
the right buttons for me. I love them, especially the part where they blow up the dam. Like, yes, because that is how resistance happens. Like, you do a small thing, and then somebody else does a small thing, and then before you know, somebody does a big thing. It builds. It hits all of my right buttons. But what I like about the Hunger Games is so at the end of the movie, Katniss has this whole thing where, oh, we don't want to die. We'll take these berries so that we die together because I don't want to kill you. And then the entire Panem is in an outrage, like, you can't kill them. This is terrible. And then later again with Peeta pretending that she's pregnant. And it's an outrage. You can't kill them. And then, they love Peeta and they love Katniss. And everybody's like, no, you can't kill them. And none of them stop to think, hang on, all of these other children, maybe we should not kill them too. But they never make that leap. And I think that is crucial in systemic horror. Like, there is always a bigger system. Even if you talk this one villain into doing the right thing, which they might, or you defeat this one villain, there's always a bigger system behind them. And nobody's ever going to turn around and go, oh, maybe we should fix the system that keeps sending these heroes on my doorstep that want to kill me.
Yep.
A big well, this is going to be funny because it's referring to a property that was made by the House of Mouse, but it was probably my favorite part of the new Star Wars television series that everybody's talking about, the one with Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and a lot of it, it's whatever. If you like Star Wars, fine. If you don't, you don't. I'm not a big fan of it. There's some stuff that I like, and it's typically when people understand kind of what makes Star Wars interesting as a property, and it's typically not the mainstream stuff. But there is a part in an episode where you meet a very nice person that gives the two main characters a ride someplace.
Oh, yeah.
And it shows on the back of the truck that they hop into a hand-painted Imperial sign. It is a part of this very nice person's vehicle that was not given to them by the Empire as you are a troop transport for the Empire. Here's the official Empire symbol that you're going to put in your troop transport. It was hand painted by this driver of this vehicle. And that's the thing. It's
big MAGA truck feelings.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's MAGA hat all over it. It's something I made this myself. I am very proud of it because I am important to the system. I understand my worth within the system, and I have purpose now, and that makes me feel worthwhile. And so I am going to proudly display how much I love this system, and those should always your villain should always be all encompassing. It should have many legs and many arms, and sometimes, it's a hand-painted sign. That's all you need to know to make people horrified. Because there are people that were just like, oh yeah, all this episode, and then there was a few people, because I pay attention to what people tweet about and things of that nature, because I've got mental illness, so I pay attention to things like that, and there's people like, that's terrifying, and I was like, you get it. That's the one thing. You get it. That's the bad part. That's the bad part. But yeah.
As I was thinking, I like when I write villains, I do like to make them a little bit human in that way, I guess. I keep pointing to the wrong side. Hardwired Island, for example, most of the corporate villains are just guys. I think the three main ones is Derek Bars, who no relation to anybody. His main thing is just a desperate need for people to think he's cool. And he's mostly just used as the fall guy by the project. There's also what's his name? I forget the other guys. Joseph Diego, his thing is he's very smart. He's very careful. The PCs can actually talk him directly into just backing out of the project by convincing him that it's not worth his time. But also his parents left Cuba at this in the specific time period when it is very suspicious for somebody to flee Cuba, if you know what I mean. and they have like all these different personalities, and they're all like all have different reactions to the PCs, but they're all basically united by we would like to make these robot slaves and make lots of money making these robot slaves. Yeah. So yeah, I try to make them like, you know, human and varied, but they're all united by this big dick project, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, I love that.
Yep.
So what we have established in this panel so far is there are no heroes. There are only people on either side. People want things. People can want things that aren't the big dick project.
Or shouldn't call that.
We're just calling it that now. That's what's happening. And people have very small scopes of vision, which even the ones who have far-reaching ideas of scope, because all of us are human, and part of the reason these systems are as upheld as hard as they are is because we are all human and we are all justifying them to ourselves in interesting and different ways, which makes it super resilient. So yeah, that is most of the panel there. Since we have about 10 minutes left, I'm going to open the floor up for questions if anyone in chat has questions. But while we are doing that, I would like for y'all to name between 1 and 3 good dystopian or systemic horror pieces of media you think people should engage with, and like a brief synopsis of each.
I'm gonna name the Girl in Space podcast.
Ooh, okay.
Which is it's what the title says. It's about a girl in space. She's on a spaceship. That's basically it. She's alone on a spaceship, and then she is attacked by a corporation who says that the spaceship, and also, by the way, the girl, belong to them.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and name 2 here. Since alas, Steffie froze. The first one is the Unwind trilogy, which is a young adult dystopian series about a world where abortion is outlawed, but because abortion is outlawed, you can instead send children between the ages of 13 and 18 to be unwound for their organs, and 99% of those organs get used up and, you know, go into other people. So you didn't kill them, they're still technically alive in a divided form, it's fine. And like a bunch of pro-choice people and a bunch of pro-life people were like, yes, this is the thing that will end the civil war, is the ability to unwind unruly teenagers, because, you know, teenagers are terrible, they're sociopaths and super predators, and like we have too many of them. So you could just sign unwind orders for them, and it felt incredibly realistic to me because of how we treat teenagers in day-to-day life at this point. Go check it out, it's very good. The other one is the Kenneth Branagh movie Conspiracy, and I cannot stop thinking about this movie ever since I watched it for the first time. It is a 2-hour movie with a bunch of amazing character actors about the, again, 2-hour long conference where Nazi leadership planned the Holocaust. And over a terrible buffet lunch in a beautiful house. And it's just a bunch of these men who could have at any point stopped anything, but were either too afraid of Reinhard Heydrich to say anything, or just were too invested in what they had going on. It's incredibly petty. It is in the Nazis being petty human genre. It is actually taken directly from the transcripts of the meeting. So, it's a dark watch. I really enjoyed it. It almost feels like an indictment of our current political landscape, so go watch it.
I've got 2 for you. I mentioned one earlier. That is the game Citizen Sleeper. It is developed by fellow Traveler, non-binary game developer and writer. It includes, if you like tabletop games, it uses a dice, clock, and drive system. It is all about resource management. The art is fantastic. It is beautiful. The music is atmospheric and ambient, and it gets the right feelings, and it's like dynamic as well. So when things are happening, music is playing. Also, if you have like good, like if you like the good auditory senses going off, it has a lot of good pings and so you're getting an excellent story and you're being kept in. As well as that, Daybreakers, the movie Daybreakers, starring Ethan Hawke and Willem Dafoe. It is about what if vampires did win? What if they did take over society? And what happens, which means that humans get turned into cattle. But also, what happens like after they win? What happens after they take over? Which is typically they have to run society and how it falls apart. And how things how things break down. It is B genre horror, like it's got that kind of schlockiness, but it's very like aesthetic. It's got a cold blue gray steel look. The music is fantastic, and Ethan Hawke and Willem Dafoe just chomp at the scenery. It's great.
Hell yeah. Ettin.
All right. Does it count if I nominate a visual novel?
Go ahead.
I'm debating this one. It's the Danganronpa series, basically. I'm sort of a fan. Okay, so the basic plot of Danganronpa is a bunch of high school students wake up inside their school, but it's all of the doors and windows are like boarded shut, and they get greeted by this talking stuffed bear who announces that the only way he's going to let any of them out is if they kill somebody and get away with it. And but also if they do, everybody else gets to actually like investigate it and have a trial. And if they get caught, they're executed. And most of it is just about the group trying to like keep up hope and not, stab each other. And then what happens when someone actually does. I do think someone could have given the author a book about gender and maybe like a cold shower or 50. But apart from that, it's very good. This is a whole series. The follow-up games are basically the mystery of the first game is what kind of world are we living in when no one's actually coming to like rescue us, and what's going on outside. The follow-up games are a little bit more about so here is the kind of fucked up world that is. Nice. And let's explore that a bit more. And it gets very weird, and it's good. The other one is probably, again, Eclipse Phase, just that game. There's a lot of horror stuff in it. In the settings, backstory, a bunch of AIs like went rogue and basically destroyed Earth. Everybody lives in like off-world colonies now. The main threat is this weird, probably alien virus that mutates people into weird horrors and does all kinds of stuff. And it might have driven the AIs to do what they did as well. But also it's not just that. There's a lot of different threats, and a lot of them are just human threats and people being jerks, to the point where the main PC group is essentially like a big faction called Firewall, which is just a secret society made of people from like every branch of society in every system that just like band together to deal with a threat. Actually, what I like about it is you can pretty much be anyone. You could, two of the players, if you wanted to play a cop for some reason, two of the players could be like a policeman who was trying to like take down a criminal gang 5 minutes ago, and also a guy who is definitely in that criminal gang. And they got the call that something's going on and they need to investigate it, and they have to team up to do it right now, because if they don't, they're all dead.
Nice.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's fun.
I love that.
They don't do the cop thing. That was
don't
just
do
example.
it.
Don't do the cop.
Yeah.
Don't do.
So
Terminator wants you to play a cop, which I'm still really mad about.
Ooh.
Max yells about the Terminator RPG and how it missed the point entirely. Is a whole other panel.
We're having that panel at CCS. It's gonna be me and you, and we're gonna dissect that fucking book, and we're gonna rip it apart.
I did a little bit of that with Ross Payton, who is one of the developers of Red Markets, which is another amazing systemic horror game.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yep,
so we did a little bit of that, but I'm very excited to have it on Late Night Comfort with Wes at some point, because I really want to go through like page by page, because Ross and I were mostly talking about how licensed RPGs kind of miss the point, but I really want to focus specifically on. Anyway, This panel is not about my hatred of the Terminator RPG. This panel is about...
Yeah, let's talk about Cthulhu Tech.
Yeah, oh my god. Jackson and Ettin talk about Cthulhu Tech is also a different panel.
We'll have
Yeah, we can do that.
We'll have that
Yeah,
happen.
we'll do that. But since we have about 4 minutes left, I think Steffie unfortunately disconnected, which is fine. Just go ahead. We're gonna go back around. We're gonna tell people who the fuck you are, where the fuck they can find you, and you know what the fuck you do for games. I haven't sworn enough on this panel, so I had to get my quota in. We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and start with Ettin.
Yeah. All right. So I'm Ettin. I'm on Twitter at Ettin64. I did this Hardwired Island, and also I hit myself with that just then. This Breakfast Cult. I'm on itch.io. That's probably the place. Ettin.itch.io. That's probably like the best place to pay my money. I just said the Twitter, so that's pretty much it.
Cool. Wes.
Hi there, my name is Wes Franks. You can find me on Twitter at ThirstTrapMoth, short for ThirstTrapMothman. Go ahead and follow me there for any updates that are happening. You can follow Carrying Cover Studios on Twitch. Come subscribe to our YouTube. We're trying to push for our YouTube because we're trying to get away from Twitch. Try one less place to give money to a big megalomaniac. So, you know, and if you want to truly support us and you want to support our endeavors, because I do have a couple of games in the work that I'm getting ready to start going through and laying out drafts and things of that nature and finding artists and all that and layouts and editors and everything like that, then go support us on Patreon, all that good stuff. Just type in Carrying Cover Studios and we pop up. I do also want to shout out Steffie here as well, because one of my favorite designers and writers and stuff. Follow her on Twitter at 100 Things I Love. Also, check out her game We Die Here. Her game We Die Here that she wrote is fantastic. It does follow within the means of systemic horror, but in a small town setting.
Yep.
Much like Stephen King's It or Netflix's Dark or Twin Peaks. So check that out.
Big feelings about Twin Peaks of systemic horror that I don't have enough time to get to.
That's another panel.
It's another The number of times I said that's another panel, and I've only been on 2 panels so far. It's rough, buddy.
Yeah.
It's rough. Yeah, please also check out Steffie does a lot of amazing games with Liz Chanterpacool, which like Afterlife, a game of wandering souls, is another amazing one. Steffie has also developed a bunch of stuff for Mage 20th edition. She is also one of the writers on a cult book that is currently in dev editing that I am developing. It is the first book I have developed all by myself. Very excited to show you guys that at some point. But yeah, hi, I am Jacqueline Bryk. I also go by Jax Romana or simply Jax. You can find me most places on the internet as Rufflejax. That's RUFFLEJAX. No underscores, no spaces. I was recently nominated for an Emmy for Best Writing on Beyond Darkness and Madness, which is a sort of like a mirrors book for Cult Divinity Lost. It actually has one of the things I am proudest of writing, which is my section on how to play out realistic trauma in horror. And it's again one of my favorite things I've ever written. So I'm really, really happy to see it nominated. I have a link tree. It's just linktree/Rufflejax. You can find me there. I have a website, which is jacquelinebryk.design. You can find most of this through my Twitter, which is again @Rufflejax. This has been Systemic and Dystopian Horror, The Wheels That Break Us. Thank you so much to my lovely panelists. Thank you to Gehenna Gaming for hosting us. I hope you got some cool ideas out of this panel. I hope you were introduced to some new ways of looking at horror. Stay tuned for the next panel on the schedule, which will be an interview with the writers for the Liminal Horror RPG, so that'll be very exciting. And hopefully we'll catch you around this weekend. Thanks, guys. Bye.